Hello and welcome again to another episode of How to Avoid Murder and Other Awkward Situations. I am your host Dave, and with me always is the lovely Laura. And tonight, we're going to discuss something gruesome and something horrible. We may laugh, we may make some jokes, we use gallows humor here. It's not for the faint of heart, you may be offended. And if you're a delicate boy that plays the drums in an alt-rock band from Chicago, you will be offended, and you probably should listen to something else, something that decent folks listen to. I wouldn't know, because I'm not listening to it. And so, without further ado, let's proceed. Well, you can hear the ice cubes crinkling, so it's time again to sit back with me and Laura Valley as we teach you how to avoid murder and other awkward situations.
Did you say your ice cubes were crinkling?
That's the word there.
Or were they clinking?
I said clinking, you just heard crinkling.
Oh.
Edit. Sorry, fuck, we're already fucked. This episode is garbage.
Oh.
Anyways, tonight we're doing, Laura's presenting, I'm reacting, and the safety word is murder. And without further ado, I give you Laura.
All right. So tonight I want to talk about the case of the murder of... Damn it, I gave it away. We're already going to know she's been murdered. No, the murder of Tara Lynn Grant. So I'm going to back up and start telling a little story about Tara, starting when her name was Tara Destromp, and she met Stephen Grant while she was a student at Michigan State University.
Are we talking about Tara or Stephen?
We're talking about Tara. Tara was a student at Michigan State University.
Like no one talks about Tara.
Yeah, and she met this guy, Stephen. He had recently dropped out of school.
Quick interruption, one of many. Did he go by Stephen?
And I was just going to say this, and I don't want to piss off any Stevens out there, but I feel like there's just a thing, and there are exceptions to this, but like guys who have very nicknameable names, but they insist on being called by the full name, it's like a red flag. It's like
Timothy.
Exactly.
Stephen.
David.
Yeah.
Like
Andrew.
I feel like Andrew does not belong in that.
Andrew has like 30 different nicknames. Andy, Drew, okay, 2. But
yeah, but Andrew somehow seems like casual and guyish, but like insisting on being called David sounds stuck up. Steven. Hey, I'm Dave. I'm Steven. No.
Bradley.
Ugh. So yes. So Tara, I feel like she was a student at Michigan State. She met this guy who had just dropped out of school. That's sort of... There was her first mistake. He had dropped out of school to take a job with former state senator Jack Faxon, who's a Democrat from Farmington Hills.
Who is a state senator luring people away from college to come work for him?
See, it sounds like this to me sounds like something that Stephen Grant probably told people to make himself sound like, well, it wasn't so much dropping out of school. It was that I couldn't let the opportunity to go work for the senator go. I'm serious, and this will be a pattern that will continue.
It's like a classic Charles Dickens story. All these poor young men forced to work for state senators.
Yeah, Stephen Grant, you'll see a pattern in his work history and just general kind of ambition here.
Please tell me he's a stay-at-home dad. Okay,
so
I'll let you go on. Yeah.
So anyways, Tara met Stephen at Michigan State. He asked her out.
Flag.
He asked her out, and she initially turned him down. And he says he in some interview. He really finds himself clever, by the way. Like, I've read lots and lots of interviews with him, and his 3-hour-long confession in which he makes many little, like, clever jokes and things.
If he was in a group tour, would he use a lot of puns and a loud voice?
No, not puns. No, so this is what he said about when he met her. He says, she said she kind of had a boyfriend from up north where she was from. I said, that's kind of like being pregnant. Either he's your boyfriend or not. But I respected that, and we were just friends.
Wait, what did he say?
What he meant was, like, you can't kind of have a boyfriend. And he was like, that's like being pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. You either have a boyfriend or you're not. But that's actually a terrible analogy.
That's not like a platitude.
Because you can't, exactly. So this is, yes, he's that kind
almost
of guy.
only counts in horseshoes and grenades.
Oh, by the way, as an aside, I was reading about this amazing crime, which I will send you links to later. This girl had the most amazing Twitter account. She was such a pretentious little bitch.
Okay. Well, am I related to her?
You will die. Anyway.
I just want to back up. I just want to back up real quick.
Okay, we're not getting very far here. This is going to be a two-parter.
Two-parter. I feel like right away, based on that project line, he should definitely be an assistant football coach somewhere. I mean, that's in his...
I don't think he was ambitious enough for that.
He didn't have ambition. You've seen the show. Okay, go on.
Okay, so, or not athletic enough, at least.
Yeah,
so he asked... All right, so he asked her out. Maybe people just didn't like him enough to choose him for that position.
I feel a lack of ambition and athletic prowess makes you qualified to be an assistant high school.
He asked her out. She turned him down. She said she kind of had a boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they were just friends. Then Tara's grandmother died. Tara's grandmother passed away later that year. And she flew to her hometown of Escanaba for the funeral. Now, Stephen Grant thought to himself, dead grandmother, opportunity. And guess what he did?
He went to Escanaba.
He did, because he had a lot of fucking time on his hands. And he didn't think, oh, poor Tara, I should give her a call and just say, I'm just thinking of you. No, he was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull off the most romantic move, and I'm going to win this girl over. Thanks, dead grandma. And he drove to Escanaba.
I can't really fault him.
He showed up, and she shows up to meet him with her boyfriend, which he says was, quote, awkward. Yeah.
Okay, but here's the thing. What guy in the world cares about your dead grandma if he's not sleeping with you and has never met your grandma?
Well,
no guy.
Exactly. So, I mean, she really didn't see through this thin veil of manipulation already. So anyways, they get back to wherever after the funeral and whatever, and she calls and tells him she's falling in love with him. So there are more irritating details of their courtship, but let's just say, so they dated a few more months. She moved in with him in his Okemos apartment. And then he said he couldn't find another political job. He says, quote, that was right after 1994, the year the Democrats lost their shirts, and there were a lot of out-of-work Democrats. So I moved down here to work for my dad.
Which is convenient, because
that's
already out of work.
So he went to work for his dad, who owned like a tool and die shop.
And was a Republican.
In Macomb County. Okay?
Wait, he owns a tool and die shop in Macomb County and he's not a Republican?
His dad.
No, that's what I'm saying.
His dad may have been a Republican. I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, he couldn't find a political job because there were a lot of out-of-work Democrats, and he was holding out for a position in management.
94 was a rough year to be a Democrat with the booming economy.
Exactly.
The dot-com era moving. I mean, like, oh man, everyone did well in the 90s except for those fucking
Democrats.
Democrats.
Have you ever seen a picture of Stephen Grant?
He's
really irritating.
Crazy Eyes. That's what he's
Crazy Eyes. Yep, that was his nickname. Crazy Eyes.
If he was in Wu-Tang, he'd be Crazy Eye Killer.
Uh-huh. So Stephen and Tara got married in September 96. Times were tough at first, as they are for many young married couples.
Especially in the mid-90s.
He says, you're going to like this one, quote, the economy wasn't so good, and it was hard to find a job, end quote. Oh, then he said, so he lets himself off the hook saying, it was really hard to get a job, guys. And then he's like, she finally got a temporary job at Morrison Knudsen, which was eventually acquired by the Washington Group. I don't know what that even is. So she got a, quote, temporary job, but of course, what happened? Her temporary job snowballed into a really high up position in some major engineering company or something.
The poor guy, I mean, like, it's a bad time. I mean, like, state senators weren't hiring unemployed college dropouts. I mean,
oh my God.
Pre-94, though, he was a toast of the town.
Let me just say that I don't have any problem with people who drop out of college to do something else. It's not for everybody, but if you just drop out of college to go work for some senator and then you're like, oh, that's over. And I'm just like, here's the thing. If you're going to drop out of college, or whatever you're going to do, just be like, own it. Don't like pretend that you couldn't find another job in politics when you didn't really work in politics. I mean, what was he doing for this senator? Cold calling people for his campaign, or I don't even know.
Summer jobs for the environment, maybe.
Yeah, it was something like that. It sounds like what's irritating about him is not that he was like kind of a slacker, it sounds like, but it was because he did everything he could to sound like he wasn't. It's like, it wasn't me. I wasn't just that I didn't like working. It was that I couldn't find a job in my chosen field of working for...
When Kurt Cobain died, so did my career.
I mean, it doesn't... Anyway. So, they got married. That was 96. In 2000, she had a daughter. In 2002, she had a son.
Ooh, what were their names? Because
I didn't write them down.
They're victims.
It's really sad. I feel bad for them because they're out there. They're not that old.
No.
Right? I mean, so they're teenagers now.
96, 98?
They were born in 2000 and 2002, I just said. So they're very
I'm not
young.
a good listener.
so they would be 16 and 14.
The economy's rough. I can't afford to listen.
16 and 14. And they live in Macomb County, so not too far from
Which just voted for Donald Trump. Once again.
Yeah, I almost took a job in Macomb County.
Did you?
I actually got offered the job there, and then it was just a fucking nightmare of a drive.
Yeah, it's one of 4 counties that I work in on a weekly basis. So. Go on.
Yeah. So then Tara Grant, with her temporary job, snowballed that into a really successful career.
Let's call her T. Grant.
No, let's call her Tara. She has a nice, normal, unpretentious name.
Tara. Not the best
So
name.
she climbed the corporate ladder, and she had to travel a lot for her job. She has 2 small kids at home. She travels a lot. So what does Steven do? Starts bitching about it. He said, she's been traveling all over the world for 4 years. It became difficult, but I learned to deal with it. I've heard comments in the media from people who said Tara must have met with foul play because she would never have left her babies like that. But this is the same person who was gone 5 days a week. Yes, there she was on weekends, but it wasn't out of the ordinary for her to come in, kiss the babies, and leave again. Now, I just gave away that he's mentioning that she's missing.
But real quick, though, how do you think he dealt with her being away? Did you think he used a PlayStation or an Xbox? What was his method of coping with her absence?
So, in case you think he was just a stay-at-home dad, you're wrong, because he also worked at his dad's tool and die shop. But he was home with the kids doing most of the child care. They also had an au pair, a 19-year-old au pair.
These are good signs.
Just store that information away for later. A young, blonde au pair from Germany.
Breaking all the au pair rules.
Fresh off the boat from Germany. She'd only been working for them since August. And so,
Fine.
What?
I have a rule of an au pair rule. It's a good
Don't have one?
No. If you do, follow the Tilda Swinton model. Model your au pair off Tilda Swinton. Looks, demeanor. Ain't nothing happening with Tilda Swinton if she's your au pair.
I like Tilda Swinton.
But
I don't feel like she's the kind of a pair who's going to do anything sketchy.
Whatever happens to the pair, I'm just going to put Tilda Swinton in her shoes, and we'll see how this scenario
she's not going to suffer any fucking fools, that's for sure.
No, she's not.
I like her.
How she became an au pair? No one knows. It's another story. But Tilda Swinton au pair ain't no fucking around.
Okay, so anyways, I just gave away... We may have to edit that out. So they were married. She was gone a lot. On February 14th, 2007... Valentine's Day. Stephen Grant goes to Macomb County Sheriff's Department and says that he has not seen his 34-year-old wife, who is an operations manager for a large construction firm, since they argued on the evening of February 9th about her frequent business trips overseas. Wow,
that is... If you're the officer on duty and somebody comes in and says, I haven't seen my wife since we argued about her frequent business trips. I'm like... Right there. I'm like, this.
What I really want to know is I really would love to do is talk to the guys who are the cops in this case and be like, come on, you guys must have been placing bets on whether or not this guy did it from the get-go. But what's shocking is it took a while before they actually had anything. And I don't know if they suspected him from the beginning. I don't know how you couldn't. But
it's an odd phrasing, though. I haven't seen my wife since we argued about her frequent business trips. Yeah. What a bitch, huh?
So anyway.
Who said that?
So anyway... Thus began an investigation into the disappearance of Tara Grant.
TG.
So, Tara Grant had been on a business trip to Puerto Rico, where she had to go a lot because they had a corporate office there. She had come back on the evening of February 9th. So there's I don't know, the airline or whatever, there's some kind of, they know she came back from this trip. They started investigating. She never got on her departing plane. She's supposed to go back to Puerto Rico on Monday. She came back on a Friday. She was supposed to go back on a Monday. She never got on the plane. No one's seen her. No cell phone activity. Stephen Grant says They got in an argument because she said she was going to go back. She's supposed to go back Monday. She says she's going to go back Sunday instead, and he gets mad. They get in an argument. She calls someone on her cell phone, and then next thing he knows, he hears her say, "I'll be right down." She walks out the door, gets in a black sedan, and that's the last he's seen of her. Okay, so that's his story, and nobody's heard of her. There's no cell phone activity. Her company in Puerto Rico, they haven't heard from her. She's a high up. She's a high up in this company, and nobody she works with has heard from her.
Now, did Stephen Grant ever allude maybe it was the Jets, the fearsome New York gang that hates Puerto Ricans that went after her? As some sort
Were
of,
they like snapping?
Yeah. When you're a jet, you're a jet all the way.
Yeah. So it turns out, so they start looking into this, right? So one thing that they uncover quickly is that...
They looked into this like, this guy did it. Let's just...
Is that there were no outgoing calls from Tara Grant's cell phone. I don't know how they must be able to get her records without her phone, right? You can do that.
You know, she didn't usually make phone calls on her phone.
No, he said he did. He said she called.
Oh, okay.
He said she called somebody and said on the phone, "I'll be right down," but there wasn't any call. So they start.
She told the police on one of her frequent business trips that she made frequent calls about frequent business. She frequently made calls about business. I hate this guy.
Also, during the investigation, yeah, we all hate him. You're going to hate him a lot more. Yeah. So during the investigation, they also uncovered emails from an ex-girlfriend who he had written to 2 weeks before Tara's disappearance. Let me get a sentence out.
Sorry.
2 weeks before, or I'll never get through the story. Okay. 2 weeks before her disappearance, he wrote some flirtatious emails to his ex-girlfriend, which, man, I searched online for all of, like, a long time, like 5 to 10 minutes, and couldn't find any of them. But I found a lot of quotes from him. And he was saying things like, comparing marriage vows to speed limits, saying that they are meant to be broken from time to time, saying that marriage was getting boring. He suggested that he wouldn't mind seeing her naked, the ex-girlfriend. Oh. It was questionable. So, of course, he says, like, I was joking around. Men always want to see women naked. It wasn't like something, I was just a private email to an old friend. I didn't mean any of it. Now you can talk.
Just say, guys, if you're doing shady shit, just don't email, don't text. Write the message on your own body lipstick, pull up your shirt, show it to the person you want to show it to, and leave it at that. That's the only way it's not going to get found out. And even then.
Anyway, Stephen Grant also couldn't keep his fucking mouth shut. He was an attention whore who gave 1 million TV interviews, called his own press conferences. He was in front of the cameras all the time. Do you remember this case do you remember when this happened? Like, I can remember his face on the TV, because it was, it was like, oh, this woman's missing. And he was on TV constantly crying and saying like to the TV, like, just come home. We just want to just call. I mean, I should find a clip and play it for you. It's the most fake sounding thing ever. When you listen to it, he says, just call me, call the cops, call so-and-so, call anybody. Just come home. Please call. Your children need you. We need you. The other thing he did was he sent lots and lots of increasingly irate voicemails to Tara while she was missing, begging her to come home and call, starting out pleading, and eventually they became very, angry sounding, like, this is ridiculous, Tara. You got to at least call your kids. That kind of thing. That's amazing. So he's a real, So, he sent those after she was reported missing. Keep that in mind. Keep that timeline in your head there. So he continues to give all kinds of fucking interviews left and right. He's in front of the cameras constantly. In fact, he gave his last interview on March 2nd, which was a Friday afternoon. An hour and a half long interview with Detroit News. This was in 2007.
Okay.
He gave an hour and a half long interview with the Detroit News on Friday, March 2nd. He said that he was offended because Tara treated him like a valet. And he said she was a bad mother because she didn't spend enough time with her 2 children. He spoke in an animated voice about feeling disjointed and how his life was, quote, surreal, like I'm walking around in a dream. He said he argued with his wife for several hours on February 9th after she told him she planned to fly back to Puerto Rico on a business trip a day earlier than she planned. When her plans changed, he said, that's when I got upset. Despite the frequent bickering, Grant said he never got violent. He said, quote, it was the opposite. When she would yell, I'd get quiet. In a lot of households, this is still him talking because he can't shut the fuck up. In a lot of households, when there's an argument, that means fists are involved. But Tara and I never did that. It wouldn't come close to happening. I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't hurt a fly, said Anthony Perkins.
Exactly. But Grant said the two parted on bad terms after their fight. He says, she left the house angry. My biggest concern was that I was going to have to explain to the kids the next day why their mother wasn't going to be there like she said she would. Before she left, the last words that she said to me were, don't forget to take my truck in on Monday for repairs. That really took the wind out of my sails. She was telling me that's all I was. It was like, you'll be the valet and take my car in. This is all his quote from this interview.
Pathetic little man.
Isn't he? Isn't he just a little sniveling weasel? Don't you hate him? Even if he was just a guy who did just get an argument with your wife, you're like, man, I just want to kick this guy in the teeth. He is terrible.
If you watch Breaking Bad, he would completely hate Skyler for an irrational reason.
He would hate Skyler, and any man that hates Skyler is an ass.
A little bit odd.
Yeah, so he's obviously a guy who is intimidated by powerful women, in case you haven't caught that.
Yeah.
He's angry with his wife, even though she's making a lot of money in her successful career, and frankly, she needs to, because he isn't making jack shit.
Yeah, re-friend zoned.
And he's managing to drag her name through the mud while she's missing by insinuating that she's a bad mother. Because he wasn't fucking done talking. He said that he was I can't remember, I can't find the quote, but he says something about like, I was like the mom. Yeah, I mean I can't find that quote. Yeah, he basically like sort of says like, I was the good mom. I was there for the kids every day. She was always gone. I mean, he's bitching about her.
He had a screenplay called Mom in a Machine Shop, all about him. And I just picture him doing these interviews, like these police in their overcoats, standing around, like trying not to get a hard on, just muttering, "Yeah, talk, motherfucker, talk, keep talking, keep." I mean, like,
yeah.
Everybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, the local radio in Detroit, because we're from the area, they love this guy. I mean, they were all over him, and they all thought he was guilty.
Yeah, and let me just say, So let's just So that was on March 2nd, which was a Friday. Well, on March 2nd, the police also obtained a search warrant.
Wait, what day?
The same day he gave this long fucking interview. He also had invited another journalist or somebody to his home that same day for another goddamn interview, and they got there in time to see this go down. So this is really interesting. Okay. So the police got a search warrant for the Grant house. According to the police, Stephen Grant had been less than cooperative with them throughout their investigation. He refused to answer questions. He agreed to take a polygraph test as long as it was administered by someone other than the police.
Yeah, don't take a polygraph.
So they had already kind of briefly searched the house when she initially went missing, and then at this point they had a search warrant, and they searched through the house. They didn't find, they weren't finding anything really. And then they went in the garage, which they'd been in before when she first went missing. And this one of the main policemen working this case, who I watched some great like Dateline or something, and he was like, I really liked him. Like he seems like he was rather haunted by this case and really fucking hated Stephen Grant, which made me like him. But he said, so they went in the garage, and Stephen Grant was there, by the way. He was there, he was like kind of skulking around outside. The cop noticed this big Rubbermaid container in the garage that just looked out of place. It somehow caught his eye. He didn't remember it being there before. It looked wrong. They opened it up. He saw something wrapped in plastic. He ripped it open, stuck his bare hand in, which I'm thinking like, is that like police procedure to stick your bare hand in something? Anyway, he quickly fills something like wet or moist or something, calls the crime scene guys in or whatever. They cut this bag open, and it's a female torso.
What month? In March?
Yes.
In his garage.
It was a really cold winter. It was early March. March 2nd.
Why the fuck wouldn't you get out of the garage?
Well, this is all going to be explained.
Okay, I knew some things about this, but like I honestly thought they found these body parts. Come on, man.
Well,
this is your typical Michigan State guy.
This guy was not a Michigan State guy.
Yeah, you couldn't even hack it there. Jesus.
Don't talk down to Michigan State.
I'm sorry. It'll be a lot of that. But, yeah.
Don't be that. You didn't go to Michigan, so why do you hate Michigan State?
Didn't go to either.
So, there you go. Anyways, they found a female torso. And they're like, well, fuck, this is Tara Grant. So they go out to look outside where Stephen Grant had been. Because he hadn't been under arrest or anything. They just had a search warrant. I think he had been walking outside. And in fact, there's footage because this crew, this media crew had come to interview him or whatever at the house. They were there when this happened. So there's like video footage of them like going in and then you see him and he's like walking away real quickly from the house and he's looking back over his shoulder. Like he knew they were going to find this. And he gets into a borrowed truck from his friend. He borrowed a truck from his friend.
Why? He didn't have a car at this point?
He did. I don't know why he borrowed his friend's truck. I can't remember what the reasoning was behind that. But anyways, he drives off.
Like a valet.
So, of course, they find the torso. I mean, it's like a movie. They're like, they find the torso, and Stephen Grant is in the wind. He's gone. So,
like a whisper. They
start tracking him. They're looking for him. Okay? So, he fled the area in a truck. He's nowhere to be found. They're checking his cell phone to see if they can find him. Meanwhile, what he had done was he had driven up to Wilderness State Park, which is like near like Cross Village and Tunnel of Trees and that kind of area up there. It's a very pretty area up north, which I guess he and Tara had like gone on vacations to, and he really loved it. So it was like an area that they kind of were like, he's probably going. There's a real likelihood. And you'll hear
where you throw the torso.
Later on, you'll hear that like he had no creativity at all. Like you should go to places if you're going to hide body parts or hide yourself. Like go to somewhere where you never have been before and would never go, because then they're not going to look for you there. If you go to places that you frequented, then they're going to look for you there.
See, I mean,
so the interesting thing is they that was March 2nd when he disappeared. On March 4th, he makes a phone call to his sister. They track the phone call, and they find him 280 miles away in Emmett County, Michigan. They send in the goddamn Coast Guard helicopters.
Finally, the Coast Guard says, finally.
They're like, yes!
Manhunt!
Woohoo! He was pursued and captured by local, state, and federal authorities while hiding in Wilderness State Park. Now, you might think, like, man, this guy had this shit plotted out. Like, he was really escaping. Nope. Because when they found him, no fooling you. When they found him, guess what he was wearing?
A shirt that said, I did it.
Well, he might as well have been. He was wearing only pants, a light shirt, and socks. And this was in March in northern Michigan. It was snowing. It was freezing temperatures. He was almost dead. He had significant hypothermia and frostbite. They had to airlift him up into a helicopter, like on a stretcher. Like he was like, I think he was like gonna freeze to death. Like they found him like crunched in a little ball under a tree, just like huddled there. And they could tell by when they were tracking him, they could tell that he kept like walking and then he would stop, and then he was walking and then he would stop. So anyways, they airlifted him to Northern Michigan Hospital, where he was hospitalized for a brief period of time because he was, had hypothermia and frostbite. During this hospitalization, he kind of, was well enough to sit down with two police officers and give a 3-hour full confession. And man, it was detailed.
This is the worst criminal ever.
Was interesting. He is not a smart man. Can I read you just a couple little excerpts from his confession?
As a married man, I'm always interested in seeing how people kill their spouses. You kind of compare and contrast ideas that I have and things like that. And I'm getting nothing from this.
The interesting thing about this confession, and I will not read you all of it because it's so fucking long. I have it in a PDF, and it's 67 pages. It took 3 hours. The jury listened to the entire thing. He goes into a lot of weird little details that aren't relevant. He questions the cops about things too at certain points. Like he just comes off as kind of an asshole. And he also like makes little jokes. Like, let me see if I can find, we may have to edit it out because it's a PDF, I can like cut and paste my favorite parts. So anyways, let me tell you about what he explains goes down when he kills her though. Because he immediately confessed that he killed her. He also had told them, by the way, that when he ran off into the woods, he was trying to commit suicide by freezing himself to death. But he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to kill himself. You know what I mean? He likes himself too much, and yet he's really, 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 really insecure. Okay, so he's sitting down with these two cops, and they're like, okay, yada, yada, yada. They're being extremely nice to him. They're buttering him up. You know, he's very comfortable. They're being folksy with him. He's kind of relaxed. So they go, okay, tell us about February 9th. So he starts telling this part about how he was going to go see some friends, play at a pub, and da-da-da. I mean, it's like going into way too much detail. It's like, dude,
they asked me the
get
band.
to the part where she fucking comes home.
He's like, I was going to be in the band, but they said no.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, well, then I found out they weren't playing, so I called her back, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be home. I was like, oh my God.
This is all fascinating to him too, probably.
It is. Like, he really feels like every detail about it. And if you read this confession, which I'll try to find the highlighted parts, and maybe we'll have to
throw it on the blog.
Edit some stuff out. But yes, we'll definitely throw it on the blog. But he really feels sorry for himself. He feels like the real victim. He feels like she was mean to him, and she threatened his manhood, and she didn't respect him.
No, he had a penis. He had a penis. I mean, she needs to treat him like he has a penis, not like he's a valet.
Yeah.
Not like he's a
So
eunuch
anyway,
valet.
so here it is. So she came home, and they were talking about her traveling. And she told him that she was thinking about leaving on Sunday morning. Now, remember, her original travel plans was she was going to leave Monday morning. So she said she's going to leave Sunday morning. And he said, no, that's not okay. And she said, well, I need to go on Sunday. And somebody named Lou, who she works with, was also going back down there on Sunday. So he's very suspicious of Lou. He had mentioned this guy, Lou, that she worked with to his ex-girlfriend in the infamous ex-girlfriend emails.
Yeah.
And thought that Tara was having an affair. She wasn't. She was not having an affair with this guy.
It's like Lou. Lou.
Come on. So anyways, he's majorly fucking insecure and yet has an incredibly inflated ego at the same time, which is a stellar combination. But I think pretty typical for these kind of narcissistic, psychopathic personalities.
Steven.
Ugh. So anyway, so they're arguing basically. He's saying, he says, you're spending too much time with him. You don't spend enough time with us. And he claims, she says, fuck off. Too bad. I have to do what I do with my job, and it's none of your business. Blah blah blah. So then he says she turns around to leave, and he grabs her wrist and says, "You're not going anywhere. We're going to finish this conversation." And then she slapped him. Well, so think about a guy who's a really insecure, fucking piece of shit whose wife's really successful and
Okay, I'm picturing it right now.
Picture Stephen Grant.
Yeah. Oh,
she
Stephen
slaps
Grant.
him. Well, apparently, and in his mind, really, as he's describing this, like this is like that was like really kind of like he was almost like
I worked for a state cinema.
He was almost like, well, I mean, what was I going to do? She slapped me. That's,
I had no choice.
So what he didn't kill her right away. He says that he struck her back. So he hit her back. So she slaps him. He hits her back. She fell and she hit her head on the floor in the bathroom. So like the fucking tile floor. Then he claims that she says that she's going to leave him. She's going to take the kids.
Okay.
She tells him, you're going to be fucking homeless, which I thought was a nice touch. I bet she did say that to him. I hope she did. But then he choked her, so he starts choking her. This is the part where I'm like, I gotta take a self-defense course, because if I read
don't. Just get more life insurance.
Yeah, right. One more fucking case where some woman is choked to death by, I'm like, there has gotta be a way to get out of that.
Sharp neck piercings?
It seems like it's really hard to do. I mean, you gotta hold that person down from fighting you off, and then choke them long enough to kill them? That's gonna take a lot of strength and a lot of like psychosis, because not psychosis, sorry, it's the wrong word. I know he wasn't psychotic. I just mean psychopathy or whatever. Like, you got to be fucking cold to sit there staring at someone and choke the life out of them. So, but he did. He choked her in the bathroom doorway. But she started to get back up. He choked her more, he at this point, she was saying, I'm going to call the police. So then he's like, well, I'm going to go to prison at this point. So he just keeps choking her. So he said she tried a little bit to fight back, scratched his hand, but it was too late, he says. Then he asked if he could draw a schematic of where exactly they were in the bathroom, and the cops let him. This is he's going into so much detail. He kind of enjoys thinking about the crime and talking about it.
But at this point, he is walking away from first-degree murder, and he's trying to get a second-degree heat of passion murder charge. And if I were the police, I'd let him keep talking too.
And at this point, he had. Let me just also point out that he had a lawyer at this point. He had gotten a lawyer. He had retained a lawyer.
Where's the lawyer?
Well, not in northern Michigan. And so he had a lawyer during the investigation, and who had kind of told him that's when he sort of stopped being cooperative with the police. I think that later the lawyer, whatever the word is, dropped him as a client.
Withdrew, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. I didn't find that information. I kind of forgot about it.
I would say once your client confesses to the police,
might have been it.
Yeah.
That might have been it. So, anyways, So he goes into quite a bit of detail, talking, saying she slapped him, blah blah blah, and he's being very almost oh gee whiz, I shouldn't have done it. Aw shucks, when he's talking. It's just creepy. But then he also says he doesn't want to look at her face. So he covered her up with gray underwear or a gray t-shirt. So he's choking her, but he doesn't want to look her in the face. So he takes a pair of fucking underwear and throws it on her face, and then continues to choke her out.
His underwear?
Yes.
It's in the bathroom?
Yeah, they're in the bathroom.
So
they're between the bedroom and the bathroom. Stephen will draw you a schematic if you want him to.
He's just leaving underwear willy-nilly in the bathroom?
Oh, who does that? What? Leaving clothes on the floor?
Hey,
what kind of animal?
I don't live. There's no underwear
Only
in your
a
bathroom.
psycho would do that.
I'm just saying.
So, anyways,
it's underwewer. Only
at this point, they ask him a whole bunch of times, was she dead? Was she still breathing? He claimed she was dead. Then he talked. I'm not going to go into the minute details of this night, but basically, he strangles her to death. Then what he says is that he's like, oh my God, I killed my wife. What do I do? So he thinks, I got to get her out to the garage. So he can't pull her down the stairs, can't lift her because she's, I don't know, a dead weight. And I don't think he's that big of a guy. He can't carry her. So he takes his belt, puts it around her neck, and drags her down the stairs.
Terrible. You're going to leave DNA and skin everywhere at this point.
Well, somehow maybe he did, but they never checked for it in the.
Well, they did the first search on that day, and they found that they didn't have to. They found the torso. I'm just saying.
Right. They didn't have to scour the house. But anyway, so he drags her down the stairs by the neck, which was pretty fucking callous, into the garage, puts her into her own car, shoves her in there, shuts the door, shuts the garage, goes back in the house. Then he tells the cops that he thinks, the au pair's going to come home. So he says, I texted, and the au pair's name is Verena. He texts Verena, and he makes a point, and this is totally unnecessary. He's like, well, we'd been talking. Verena and I had been text messaging. I just put text messaging back on my phone. We were text messaging back and forth, but we'd been going back and forth for a while, just sending text messages all the time to each other. And the cops basically cuts him off okay. And then he's like, I knew she was coming home. So anyways, he says he sends her a text that says, don't come home. Which, whatever. So he tells her not to come home. Then he hides Tara.
Does he realize the police can get all his text messages too and read them?
He must not have realized that, because what he actually texted to the au pair, it comes out in the trial later.
Oh boy.
You owe me a kiss.
Really?
Yeah, he texted that.
Took care of that problem.
He texted that to the fucking au pair after he just murdered his wife. Which, yeah. So anyway, so he drags her down the stairs, throws her in the truck. The nanny did come home that night, and he tells her that they got in a hellacious fight and Tara stormed off. So over the next few days and during the investigation, he convinces the nanny, the au pair, that Tara has left him. And she believes him. Because it turns out, and this came up in the trial, that they were having a thing. Mm-hmm. She actually had flown back to Germany when the investigation started. But she became sort of more suspicious that perhaps Tara hadn't left Stephen. And she called the police from Germany. They flew her back, of course, for the trial. And she told them everything, including the fact that she had spent the night in Stephen and Tara's bed the night before he murdered Tara. and the night after, I believe. And that they had, first she says that nothing had ever happened with them. Then she admits that they slept in the same bed. Then she admits they kissed a few times. Then she admits they had oral sex. Which is like...
He only got oral from her?
So disgusting. When you look at him, you're like, ugh. And before you ask, I don't know who was given and who was receiving. I don't know if it was mutual.
Yeah,
I had no details about the oral sex.
She's sleeping in the bed. I mean, you're the au pair. I mean, I feel like you can do better than that.
She was 19, though. Maybe she was not. Maybe she was, like, taking it slowly. Although, like, really, do not. Come on. Don't sleep with your...
If you're going to sleep with
but,
your...
you know, what a creep. He's in his 30s. She's 19. So she's a kid. And he is in the position of power. He's her boss. He's been flirting with her for months, it turns out. He's charming her somehow. She's young and naive.
You and me a kiss on my penis,
he also,
which I also have.
Ew. He also makes her feel sorry for him by pretending like his wife left him.
Have you ever felt sorry for a man? Like, has anyone ever tried to, like, garner your sympathy? Does that ever work?
I mean, like, have I felt sorry for a guy that I then went on to hook up with? No, not really.
That's not what
it's not really a turn on.
No, I mean, like, do you ever get the impression when people are trying to make you?
Oh, I hate that.
They're trying to elicit sympathy.
I hate that.
It makes me want to bury them alive while their parents watch. It does.
That's
I mean, whenever
brutal.
I'm just saying that I'll give something to feel sorry about. I know. I'm just saying, like.
Well, I know, and it's like an extension of like.
I'm nice, but like.
I do feel sorry for people if they have real problems and they're gonna just like tell me as you know, a friend or whatever, and they're gonna tell. Then I don't want to bury them alive. But if someone's gonna be like really like it's not that bad, but they want to overblow how bad it is to make it seem more sympathetic, like oh my god. Well, it's extension of oh my god, I'm so busy.
Everybody should be
Fuck
like,
you, everyone's busy.
Everyone just needs to be like the last scene in the movie Shane. The cowboy is got a hat over his eyes. He's been shot in the stomach.
He just rides off into the sunset.
Rides off in the sunset, and that's it. Or, more modern version, be like Vic Mackey, where he gets shot in the stomach, goes to the hospital. His kids are there. He's separated. He comes out, bandaged, with his guts kind of barely strapped in, hugs his kids, and goes into surgery. That's a fucking man. Yeah,
Vic Mackey. Yeah. Thanks for giving the ending away.
That is not the ending.
Oh.
No, the ending. You saw that.
All right, you told me the ending. Damn it.
Well, we can watch it.
I'm still going to watch that last half of the season.
The Shield's just almost too intense. Okay,
it's so intense. Okay, anyway, so
back to this.
So he's working over the nanny before and after. He continues to really work hard to make the cops feel sorry for him here. You know, there's a lot of like, well, you know, I mean, I don't know that I just, you know, I tried to just, you know, I mean, I don't know. He's just, ugh. So what? He kills her on a Friday night. Okay, so Saturday he's like, I got to do something with this body. But he didn't know. It was cold. He didn't think he'd be able to just bury her. So Sunday morning, he calls his dad. And he's like, Dad, are you coming into the shop today? And his dad's like, no. And he's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. So he takes Tara to his dad's tool and die shop.
Okay, good.
Takes the body, backs the truck in. Unloads the body onto like a table in there, and then goes into way too much detail telling about all the various tools. Wait, can I just read you? This is fucked up.
Did he drive her there like Weekend at Bernie's style with her in the car?
She's wrapped in plastic in the back of the car.
Oh, that's not Weekend at Bernie's style.
No, she was not sitting up in the car wearing sunglasses. If that's what
that's exactly what I meant.
It's really like, first of all, he's like complaining mildly that, okay, so this is what, I'm just going to read you this part. I'm sorry, but I have to read you a little bit of the confession because it's just so
Make sure you use
horrible.
His voice,
he's just such a piece of shit. So he's like, I didn't know. It was too cold. I knew I wouldn't be able to hide her. So on Sunday morning, I took her to the shop. I told Verena I had to go into the shop to do something. And I took the truck in and I called my dad to make sure he wasn't going to be coming in on Sunday. And he said, no, he was somewhere. And I said, okay. And I called him back just to make sure because I didn't want him walking in on me. And there was a plastic tarp that was at the house, and I'd taken it out with me. And I had taken my bow saw, like a tree cutting saw, and thinking I would do that would do it, that I could, the problem, it wasn't like she was lying flat or curled up in a ball, you know? One of her legs was like kind of out to the side, and her arm was out to the side, and she was much bigger then. I don't know what where he was going there. And then one of the cops kind of helps him out, because he kind of trails off, he's like, and the cop says, stiff? And he says, yeah. But he's talking about her like she's really like not a person anymore at this
No,
point.
like she's a pain in the ass. I mean,
Exactly. She's still a pain
so
in his
annoying,
ass. Like,
so annoying.
oh, working all the time, making money, paying for this house and all my needs. And then she had to just go into rigor mortis in an awkward position. Fuck up my ability to use a goddamn tree saw to cut her into pieces.
I'm not a valet.
Oh my
I'm a man.
Jesus Christ. I wish she had Lorena bobbited him.
Yeah.
I hope he gets raped in prison. I'm sure he has been. Okay, so anyways, the cops are like, so they must just want to punch him in the face, but they're so nice to him. And the cop says, so she was hard to move, right? And he's like, yeah, very hard to move. Very hard.
I mean, I see, this is where I'd be a great detective or cop, because I would just be...
Yeah, you would. You'd be able to be very nice.
There, like, just like smiling on the inside like Willy Wonka and like, oh, please keep talking. Yes. Oh, go on. Yeah.
So then they're kind of like, okay, so you got the vehicle. So he says, okay, back to the vehicle in. Okay. Close the door and there wasn't enough room. So I had to move everything that was in the shop like away. And I put the piece of plastic down and I put her on the piece of plastic. And then I pulled the truck out so it wouldn't be sitting in there while I was doing what I was doing. See how he's going to so much detail? It's almost like, would you be thinking through all this little minute detail as you're recounting it if it was an emotional thing to recount? I don't think you would. I don't think he had a lot. I think he kind of enjoyed savoring the memories of it.
I feel like what he did is he described a second-degree murder.
He was proud of it. He was kind of proud of what he did, I think.
He thought he'd get 8 to 10 years. And
yep, and I'll get to that later. He was a real piece of shit. Okay, so he weighed the four corners of the plastic sheet down with pieces of steel from the shop and tried to cut something. Oh, this is him talking. And I tried to cut something, her hand, with the bow saw, and it wouldn't do it. And I started panicking. I washed my hands off. I went to the car, or I went out to the truck, and I brought something with me, a blanket or something that we'd had, a pint we had at the house, and a couple big gulps off that, and then I shredded everything in a briefcase. And by the time I was done shredding everything, I decided, okay, now I can do this. And I went back over, and I couldn't do it. So he was having a hard time cutting his wife's body into pieces. But, like, you'll see that, like, really, he struggled a tiny bit, but it was really more like the logistics, I think. Okay, so then he says, I took her laptop computer and I put it on the bandsaw and cut it into pieces, but the disk drive shattered and there's glass everywhere and I had to clean that up. That was a really stupid move, Stephen. That was me, not him.
Right, yeah.
He would never call himself stupid. Then he says, then I had to move all that steel out of the way. Again, there's little pieces from the box, the hard drive everywhere, and I got a piece in my finger, and I had to get a tweezer and pull it out, and I'm like, oh my God, there's blood here now, and I panicked. I just don't know what to do, and I had on those Solomon clogs. Okay, so he says that. I don't know what Solomon clogs are. So he describes the shoes he's wearing, and the cop says, mm-hmm. And he goes, the same ones I had on in the woods yesterday. Did they ever find the shoes? Now, why the fuck would you ask? And the cop says, that I don't know. And then Steven says, not that I care.
And the cop's like tapping
and then the cop says, okay. Then Steven says, I just wondered, how come I walked out with no shoes on? I know I had shoes on when I walked out there. Anyway, so I finished putting it into smaller pieces so I could throw it out, and I put it in a box. Blah, blah, blah. So he cuts up her computer, da-da-da-da-da. Then somehow he takes her computer, all her other stuff, her phone, all the documents in her briefcase, her purse, everything in her purse. He rips them all up, shreds them all up, throws them into various plastic bags, drives them to various dumpsters around, like apartment buildings around the area.
This is the worst.
It's amazing he didn't get caught sooner. Amazing. He spreads the evidence around everywhere because he's not done. So he throws pieces of her personal belongings into like 4 different dumpsters in different apartment complexes.
And keeps one in his house.
No. So
listen.
listen.
Torso's in the house.
Well, it wasn't always.
God.
Don't forget, he has her entire body at the tool and die shop right now. So, anyway, yada, yada, yada. He goes into an incredible amount of detail.
What was he thrown into the dumpsters?
Her personal stuff. Not her body yet.
Okay, I thought her hands and feet.
Nope. He tried that and it was too hard, so he's like, I'll start with the things that aren't made out of flesh. So then he goes and gets the notorious Rubbermaid container. And he's talking about how he's like, trying to find the right tool for the job. And he's like, I'll use the bandsaw. And then I'm like, no, you can't use the bandsaw. It's going to be too much of a mess. Ew. And then he says, so I remember my dad needed a hacksaw for something, and he had one of the bandsaws break. They stay perfectly straight. They're like an inch wide. And they're like 10 teeth per inch, and they're high carbon steel. So I took one of the old ones and I broke it, and I snapped another piece off, and I wrapped a washcloth or a blue towel around it, and I started cutting with that.
Is he trying to impress the police that
He
knows
is.
different kinds of...
He is. So then, like, he keeps like. And then he's like, it got dull really fast. It was used. So I thought if I have a new blade and do the same thing. So I got a new blade and I broke it into pieces. I mean, he just goes into, the police are probably like, oh my God, you fucking piece of shit. So he breaks a goddamn bandsaw, which takes him like seriously 5 minutes to describe how he does it. Breaks the bandsaw, not cuts her up. Then he's like, he goes into way more detail about that. Then he's like, and I cut Tara's hands off. And I cut her next joint, and the next joint, and at some point I threw up. And I threw up again, and I drank some more whiskey. And then I just told myself, look, if you don't do this, you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And I kept cutting her.
Okay, well, that's not a good thing to say.
No, I mean, it's not. So then he's like, then they're like, okay, no blood at this point or anything? That's the cop asking. And he says, very little. And it surprised me, to be honest. It really surprised me that there was that little blood. Then he describes how he couldn't get her pants off. The blade kept catching in the cloth. I mean, it's really detailed in a very cold, as if you're like butchering an animal, which I feel like that would need more emotion than that. I mean, he's very emotionless about it. He never ever talks about feeling bad about it. Never. Mm-hmm. He wrapped all the pieces into plastic. He goes into an incredible amount of detail about this. What kind of plastic, where it was in the shop. Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. So he wraps up all the pieces, puts them all into the Rubbermaid bin, okay? Takes the bin, puts it in the truck. Then he's just like, it's very confusing, the timeline. I think that like the next day this happens. So remember, killed her on a Friday, cut her up on a Sunday. On Monday, takes the bin to this park, not like a playground park, but like a big park, so connected to woods. And I was trying to figure out where, and I couldn't quite figure out, but somewhere nearby where he lives, somewhere that they had taken the kids. He and Tara had gone, a place that he went jogging a lot, and the people like walk their dogs and went jogging and stuff. So he takes, but it's really fucking cold and snowy. So he takes a sled, his kid's sled, a red plastic sled, puts all the body parts onto the sled, and then starts dragging them on the sled down this hill.
That's amazing. Towards
the woods. It is amazing. And the really horrible part is that then he like makes a joke about it. And I'm going to see if I can find it. I can't find it, but I'm just going to paraphrase it. He says something about, oh no, I found it. He says, I got about a third of the way in, the hill starts dropping down, and it went right into the woods right there. And as soon as I started going down, it was like Keystone Cops. The sled just took off, and now I'm chasing after the sled with Tara's remains and cut out body on it down a hill. I'm like, don't make a little clever aside to how it was like the Keystone Cops and make us like imagine this like Benny Hill music while you go chasing down a fucking hill after a sled covered with your wife's remains, which he's now calling them.
Why?
He's emotionlessly talking about his wife's cut up body.
Can I just say what I would do in this situation here? First of all, I'd remove all the teeth from the head with pliers. I'd grind them into a fine dust, put it into a little jar. I would dissolve the fingerprints, the fingers, and get some kind of light acid, even a vinegar thing, until the fingerprints are gone. Then I'd cut it up, but you don't put it in the woods. Put it in water.
Do you know what, though?
Put it in a lake.
You wouldn't do any of that. Because you know what? You wouldn't be able to. Because normal people would be so fucking horrified and distressed by cutting apart a body that they wouldn't be able to do it. And that's the most disturbing thing. Like, that movie that we were watching last night, Green Inferno, which, spoiler alert, beheading scene. Not a big shock. But anyway, yeah, I mean, here it's like a movie. They're like cutting this guy's head off. And I'm like watching it. It's like my face is all scrunched up and I'm like looking out of one corner of my eye at it because it's so cringy. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy sat there and his wife of 10 years sawed all of her body parts and sawed her into like, I don't know, 9 parts or something. Like cut. I mean, can you imagine like the mother of your children? Please don't imagine it.
No, I mean, I'm saying, but if you're gonna do it right. That's all.
I know, but I'm saying, yeah, I get it. But I'm saying he's an idiot, number one. But also, like, he's cold-blooded. Like, and I'm not condoning passion killings and whatever, but I can understand the psychology of snapping.
This isn't even a passion
killing. No, I'm not saying this is. I don't think this is. In fact, I think this was premeditated in some sense. I don't even believe him that they had an argument and she slapped him and he snapped. I think he kind of had in his head that he was going to kill her. I really do. Because I just don't think anyone would be this cold if they snapped and accidentally killed somebody. I think he had thought about it. At the very least, he'd thought about it.
All right.
But what I was going to say was, it's like, hopefully I would never snap and kill someone in a fit of passion, but like I can, I'm not saying it's okay, but I get how that happens. How people just get so enraged or whatever that they would kill someone in the heat of the moment. That's like almost like you could understand that sort of psychology. I mean, it seems like, okay, that's horrible, but then the psychology to cold-bloodedly kill someone and then drag their body all around town and fucking cut it up over a period of hours. I mean, there's no way. I don't even think I could cut up a person that was like evil that I had to kill. That would be hard. But to cut up someone that was like your companion for 10 years. Anyway.
Yeah.
So he takes all the body parts into the woods and basically throws them all over the place into the snow. Like tries to just scatter all the body parts and bury them in the snow, which is the dumbest fucking idea
so bad
in the world. He keeps talking about the torso. Like he's talking about it as the torso, Tara's torso. So Tara's torso I took and buried in the snow, and the pieces I put on the sled and buried that in the snow. Oh, I guess he first buries all the pieces together on the sled.
Did they ever find the pieces?
A lot of them. I think they might have eventually found them all. So he does all that. Then he panics the next day. He's like, oh shit, that was a bad idea. So he goes back the next day and he finds all the same stuff. Now I'm talking about her like she's stuff. Poor Tara. Oh my God. So he goes back. I'm just trying to figure out what the fuck the timeline is here because he's so all over the place. Anyways, he goes back, I think the next day, and like hides the body parts better. This is awesome. Hides them like up high in the trees, right? Like he shoves them into like crevices of trees and like
this is like me in high school
into hollows of things. Yeah, it's like really poorly thought out.
This is like a high school kid with porn. You're sitting in class and you're like, oh crap, I left that hustler in a really obvious place. I know where I can put it. My mom's maternity dress, and you come back and hide it again, allegedly. Go on.
Yeah.
Here's how I would kill my wife if I was a sociopath. I think the best way to kill someone and get away with it is to not make it look like something you're trying to get away with. So here's what I would do. I'd become the Barbie head killer. I would commit 3 murders, and the wife would be the second one. I would find some random person, look a little bit like her, isolate them, murder them, and what I would do is I take a Barbie head that I had already purchased years ago. I'd put it inside her body somewhere. A little detail like that.
That is horrible. Mm-hmm. You're a psycho.
Then
you're not condoning this, and you know what? Don't give any psychos any fucking ideas. But you know what? You wouldn't do this because you're not a serial killer, right?
No, I would.
Please don't be a serial killer. Please,
I would never serial kill you.
Please don't be a serial killer at all. I don't want to be. I don't want to be one of these women who's like married for 35 years, and then the police are like, by the way,
you know who I want to kill. I'd give you the list. I probably won't kill any of them at this point.
Oh my God.
Maybe that one.
You are not killing anyone. Stop it.
All right. But
he's never going to kill anyone.
That's really my fascination with crime. I've always wanted to be able to get away with murder if I had to. I just probably won't murder anybody at this point because,
Well, it doesn't really seem worth it, does it? People do not get away with this kind of thing. I mean...
No, they do too. I mean, if you don't kill someone in the heat of passion... I mean, like,
let me just say, you don't get away with killing your wife. It's just you're too close. I mean...
No, I'm just okay. I'm saying that would be a good way to kill your spouse. You look at make it look like some kind of serial killer is killing people similar to them, and you kill 3 people, put them in the middle. That way, no one's looking at you. I mean, if you're that cold-blooded, kill 2 other people.
I guess.
What's 2 more?
So anyways, so then he goes back into the woods like the next day, and he's like, well, I told Verena. Like he also a little bit brags about Verena, the au pair. He a little bit brags about her, like, oh yeah, like when he was like, remember when he was like, yeah, we were texting each other a bunch. Like, he's like, yeah, I was telling her I was going for a jog, and like she knows I jog a lot, so
I'm pretty fit.
Ugh.
No one brags about Tilda. That's why you get Tilda Swinton in there. None of this is happening.
So he goes back to look for all the body parts. First he couldn't find the torso, panicked. He's like panicked a bit, found it. So she's shoving pieces into trees. Under fallen trees, up high in the trees. He even says, under all the fallen trees, the hands, feet, Tara's head, everything. Ugh. He talks about her head. I mean, can you imagine cutting your wife's head off? Please just say no. I keep asking that, and I'm like, don't.
I would never hurt you.
Please
I love
don't.
you. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so then he hides it all. Oh, yeah, and he makes a point also, like, my hands were so cold because I was wearing these thin vinyl gloves.
Vinyl. I prefer
Then he tells another little...
Sounds better than vinyl.
He makes another little clever, like, joke thing. Listen, I mean, he's a fucking sociopath. He says... And that was when I brought, before this, on my way home, and that day to go home is when I bought the razor blades and the rubber gloves. And then I bought coffee filters, too. And you're thinking, why did I buy coffee filters? Because I told the lady I was making a project, making flowers, and we were going to dye them, and that's why I needed the rubber gloves. But then I thought about it, and I went, oh, great, now I look like a crystal meth manufacturer. No. First of all, nobody was fucking wondering why you bought coffee filters. And he made a point to like make up a story about a craft he was making with his kids to the woman at the counter. So she wouldn't think he was like, oh, this guy's buying razor blades and rubber gloves. He must be murdering his wife. I mean, and he's bringing his kids into it like, oh, I told her I was making flowers out of coffee filters. Oh, yeah. And then like the cop chuckles. And then he says, well, that's what they always say on the news. They're always buying coffee filters and rubber gloves. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Now they're calling the police, telling them I'm manufacturing. And then the cop says, you didn't make any crystal meth, did you? And he says, I didn't make any crystal meth, I promise. Oh, my God. Don't make fucking jokes while you're describing the horrific murder, dismemberment, and hiding body parts of your wife. I mean, really, what an asshole. So, I mean,
it's not funny, ha-ha.
No, it's funny, ha-ha-ha-ha. I'm going to punch you in the teeth. So he goes back like 3 times. So he hides all the parts initially. Then he goes back. Yeah. Then he goes back and digs up all the parts, rehides them. But he puts the torso. No. He rehides the torso. Then he hears that the police, as part of the investigation, are going to search that park. Because it was a park they went to a lot. So it was a really stupid idea to hide anything there. So then he thinks, fuck, I got to go back and get that torso or they're going to find it. Because I guess he couldn't hide it that well because it was big. So he goes back to the park, gets the torso, puts it back in the Rubbermaid bin, takes it back and puts it in his garage. Like, I guess he was going to deal with it later. I don't know what his plan was with the torso. He never really says.
Maybe he was going to make it a little fleshlight kind of thing.
Ew. Well, actually, he says, I put the torso back in the bucket. Now it's from Saturday, it's in there. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Must be Thursday morning. No one searched anything. Nobody's done anything. I kept thinking, wow, I got away with it. I can't believe I got away with it. I'm thinking, now what do I do? The torso's in the shop. It's got to get disposed of. Oh, he put it in the shop. Oh, my God.
That's where they found it?
Nope. No. So then he brings it back into his garage. That was a really dumb idea.
Just get rid of the... My God.
He thought he gotten away with it. I mean, he really did. Then when the police get the search warrant, that's when he's like, you know, I'm fucked. So that's when he takes off. So he describes that. Then he goes into this long, sad description about how he's searching for sleeping pills so he can kill himself, and he's searching for a gun and his sister's house. He's like trying to, I don't know, all this. His sister wasn't, it must have been like his sister's cabin or something. Okay, then he bashes his lawyer. So he says he was going to call his friend who was a lawyer, who he referenced earlier, all right? And they're like, why would you call so-and-so and have him turn you in and not call your attorney? Yeah. And he goes, this is what he says. He says, because he's a dick. Don't tell David, that's his attorney.
What was his last name?
But he's a dick. Yeah, so then he and the cops are like chuckling, like, did I say he's a dick? No, ha ha. You know, yeah. His attorney doesn't like him either, apparently. So, yeah, so then it's boring, like his description of his own sad, sad tale of trying to escape into the woods to die. He didn't want to die. I don't know what he was thinking. He was...
I think the guy was like... It's almost like he was watching himself as if he was in a TV show.
He was, and he was feeling sorry for himself. And he continued...
But he was excited. This is the part
yeah, it was exciting, because this was his moment to shine. And he, a little bit, like, he really kind of loved the spot.
He got a blowjob out of the whole thing.
He loved the spotlight. Oh, God, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I feel bad for the jury. They had to just
Can I defend Stephen Grant here for a little bit, though? Not defend him, but, like, understand him.
Don't defend him.
I'm not defending him, but this happened when he was 34 years old, right? How long had he and his wife been together? Since college, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, people shouldn't get married that young.
No, they shouldn't. But, you know, here's the thing, guys. There's a little thing called divorce. If you don't like somebody, then just divorce them. But the problem with that was that She probably had a great life insurance policy. And if she divorced him, he'd be living in a shitty apartment and no au pair because she'd have to go get a different job. And God knows he doesn't want to have to go out and find another senator to work for. So
all he wanted to do was get half, and he did.
Oh, my God.
The torso. That's about half.
Oh, Jesus.
All I want is your torso.
So let me just wrap that up. So anyways, they formally charged him on March 6th. So they found him. So they searched his house on the 2nd. They found him in the woods on the 4th. On the 6th, he was formally charged with count 1, homicide, murder in the first degree, premeditated, and count 2, disinterment and or mutilation of a dead body. So during the trial, the poor jury had to hear his entire confession, and then they got to hear from the au pair detailing their relationship, which really did nothing to win him any favors. It just made him look like a slime who was trying to leave his wife for this 19-year-old. They also got to hear the emails to the ex-girlfriend, which actually had been released by the Detroit Free Press during the investigation before he was even charged. They released those emails.
The Free Press loves releasing.
Yeah, they do. God love them. Anyway.
We should run Kwame sometimes.
It took them, I think, 3 days or something to come up with what they were struggling over was whether it was first degree or second degree.
Now, here's where I'm going to jump in with my big legal
Please
analysis. They tried him
for first
degree
degree.
murder, and they failed.
Yes.
They convicted him of second degree murder. Here's where it gets really interesting. Now, people that aren't married to you or me don't know our conversations about sentencing guidelines and things like that. Like that case in California where the guy raped a woman in San Francisco area, Oakland, whatever. He got no time in prison, and there the probation officer submitted sentencing guidelines that said, based on this record, here's his sentence. And most people, when they're sentenced, and after they're convicted, the probation department, and this is true in Michigan, submits what's called a sentencing guideline report. Here, the sentencing guidelines that they submitted were 18 to 31 years for second-degree murder and disinterment. Disinterment is an actual charge in Michigan where if you basically desecrate a body without legal authority, it's a 6-year felony. So there's that, and second-degree murder in Michigan is life in prison or any number of years. Now, any number of years is based upon the sentencing report, which here was 18 to 31. The judge gave him 50.
I know. I was going to explain that part, but thank you for stealing my thunder. No, I'm glad you explained all that about sentencing guidelines. No, yes, they really presented a lot of reasons why the judge should impose a much stiffer sentence. Yeah, and he got sentenced to 50 to 80 years.
And really, I can see this. They did
even though it's second degree murder,
amazing job of the trial here because.
I'll read you some quotes from the sentencing, which is kind of interesting.
Please.
So the judge, Macomb County Circuit Court Judge Diane Drzezinski, called the case mind-numbing to the court and said she was satisfied with the upward deviation of the sentencing guidelines due to Grant's, quote, demonic, manipulative, barbaric, and dishonest actions. Then she said, the defendant inflicted extreme humiliation on the victim for his own gratification. He felt superior to her.
He probably didn't like having a woman judge.
He probably didn't. Prosecutor Eric Smith asked the judge to exceed the minimum guidelines for a number of reasons, including the psychological injury to the children and Tara Grant's family. Now, during the sentencing, Tara Grant's sister, who had gotten custody of her 2 children and adopted them, revealed that he was convicted on like December 21st, that on Christmas, the daughter told Tara's sister and her husband that she and the brother had possibly seen and at least heard him kill their mom. So they had been in the house, they'd been awake, which I'm not sure if he knew that or not. But anyways, they were traumatized, and they knew their dad had killed their mom. And the daughter was scared, and she was scared of when he was going to get out of prison. And I think that was a big part of it also, that everybody fucking hated Stephen Grant with good reason. He's a piece of shit who's cold-blooded, and he should not have gotten out in 15 years. And he didn't. He got sentenced to 50 to 80 years. But before he was sentenced, but after he was convicted of second-degree murder, he resisted being put in on suicide watch. And he said, why would I kill myself? I just hit the lottery. because he was convicted of second-degree murder. He thought he was going to get 15 years.
Yeah.
So, surprising to no one, he's appealed his case several times, and
as recently as last year.
And he has been denied. He claimed that he was improperly denied access to an attorney. That was not true. He claimed that the police improperly obtained his confession in his hospital bed.
No.
He claimed that the pretrial publicity made it impossible to receive a fair trial.
I would just focus on those guidelines if I were him.
Bullshit. Well, nobody accused him of being a genius. A real sad end note here, though, or a kind of side note aftermath here, is that he was sentenced in 2008, in like January 2008, and in June 2008, his father committed suicide. And reports indicate that his father was seeking some visitation time with his grandchildren. And I don't think he was getting it. I mean, I think that the Tara Grant's...
He should be able to get...
I don't know. I mean, those kids were traumatized. Maybe they were just like, we need to just cut the ties with, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he was going to get... who knows? I don't know. Maybe Tara Grant's family was kind of trying to let those kids kind of reinvent their life and not remember that old life. And I don't know. Who knows? I don't even know if that's true. I only read that one place, but his father did commit suicide shortly after he was sentenced. You can imagine. And I mean, seriously, cut her body up in his fucking dad's fucking shop. I mean, he had no respect for anybody. This guy, he is a cold-blooded...
There's one little thing you didn't mention that I want to...
Ooh, what did I miss?
One of the reasons they departed too is he made a joke after he was about the sister of Tara Grant had organized a run for charity for victims of domestic violence, and so he put a little release out saying if he could get a T-shirt for that run since he inspired it or something. And
yeah, that's the kind of thing.
The judge cited that, and
good.
They referenced his jokes and
they said he had no signs of remorse ever, ever. And if you read his whole confession, he doesn't. He has no remorse.
Well, it sounds
the only thing it sounds like he regrets at all is that he felt like mildly bad that he wasn't going to get to see his kids.
Yeah, and it sounds like a guy who he was capitulating towards, a confession that would give him a second-degree murder conviction. Mm-hmm. That's what he wanted, and then, he felt thrilled when he got it, and
Yep, he felt like he won.
To be there.
He was like, all right, 15 years, I'm going to be in my 50s, I'm still going to have a lot of life to live. Yeah. I can, get out and find some, young woman who'll be impressed with my prison tattoos. And no, fuck you, Stephen. And you know what? I bet you he'll be up for parole after 50 years, but
he'll be 96.
Yeah, he's going to die in prison. He's going to die in prison. And if you just look at him, I mean, he is not going to do well in prison. I won't be surprised if at some point he gets beaten to death. Dahmer style. I mean, he just seems like the kind of guy people are going to fucking hate.
They don't like people that are weird. He's just another killer. Anyways.
No, but he's going to be... No, but I'll tell you why they won't like him. He's fucking full of himself, and he'll think of himself as superior to every other person in there.
Well, here's a picture of him right now.
Yeah, he's not looking so good.
Looks like the mighty have fallen quite a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll put that on our blog page, too.
Okay.
So.
Can you write to him? Is he on Write a Prisoner? I bet he is.
Well, we'll figure that out.
Oh, God. If you haven't looked at the Write a Prisoner website, you treat yourself. Oh, somebody posted, remember those Richard Ramirez letters that somebody was posting?
Those are great.
Oh, my God. But, you don't want to get hit on by Richard Ramirez. That would give me nightmares for the rest of my life. So why would you want to write to a prisoner? And the really creepy thing is that, some women write to prisoners and then they marry them. I mean, so many of those fucking serial killers or, spree killers or whatever, horrible, horrible criminals get married in prison. Ted Bundy, who, oh my God, I know he's a heavy hitter and everyone knows everything about it, but it is fascinating.
There is some correspondence with Stephen Grant, and oh
my God.
He met somebody.
Did he? Oh, yes, shit, I forgot about that. Yes, okay, tell that part. I wrote that down and then I just forgot about it. Yes.
Jailhouse Romance with a
yes, he did.
Woman named Jennifer Colca, who was in prison for murdering her daughters.
Yep, she did.
And they were little lovebirds.
They were sending little clandestine notes between the bars of the. No, I don't know. They were getting guards to pass them.
Yeah. Anyway, so
yeah, he was hoping they could, like, meet in a closet or something. LOL, right? Yeah, she cold-bloodedly murdered her 2 daughters.
So now I think it's the part of the show where you need to ask me how this could have been avoided.
Oh, Dave, how do you avoid being murdered by your spouse, cut up into pieces?
Well, let's go back to the very beginning here. If you're a young woman at Michigan State or any
Anywhere
other fine university and you're dating a guy who drops out of school to go work for a state senator, know that he's full of shit. If any guy ever comes to your relative's funeral that's never had sex with you, he's only there because he wants to have sex with you. I promise you that. That's it. It's a complete manipulation. It's an overstep otherwise. Hey, I liked you before we had sex, allegedly. If you told me that your uncle had died, or I wouldn't show up at the funeral.
Yeah.
We weren't like dating or anything like that. That would be fucking weird. That'd be psychotic.
I didn't go to your grandma's funeral and we were dating because you told me it would be weird and I shouldn't go. So I was like, okay, I won't go.
Were we dating or were we married?
We're not married. I would have gone.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much weird, just be kind of a pain. I mean,
right. No, I thought that was a really weird move. And you know what? I think that here's the thing. I think that stay-at-home dad thing gets a lot of like flack, but I think that there's a difference between like if you're a stay-at-home dad and you're like fine with it and you've got the self-esteem to be cool with not being the breadwinner and you're going to be the caretaker and everything, that's great. But this guy didn't. He felt like she was doing him wrong by being the one whose career was taking off and who was making all the money. It pissed him off. I mean, come on. Can you imagine if those gender roles were reversed and you know, the husband's off like traveling for business and making a lot of money? I mean, that's just what wife's going to be. I mean, they might be upset with the travel, but I mean, come on. You know, his fragile ego couldn't take
and
it.
Her job's kind of exciting. You're in Puerto Rico, you're flying around. That's really
yeah, and she was important. She probably was kind of barking orders at him because she was probably like, you know what, you're home with the kids, so you have to do these domestic things. Can you take my truck in to get it repaired while I'm in Puerto Rico next week? I mean, of course he's going to.
I drove him crazy too. My truck.
It wasn't that he missed her so much that he wanted to spend time with her. He was jealous. He felt threatened. His manhood was threatened. I mean, he pulled a classic insecure guy move of having an affair with the nanny.
It's awesome.
You know, and complaining to everybody that Tara was such a bad mother because she didn't pay enough attention to the kids, you know, trying to build himself up at the same time, referring to himself as Mr. Mom and all that. Oh, by the way, there's an example. Michael Keaton, now he did kind of have an affair in that movie in Mr. Mom, but he was a good stay-at-home dad. Remember that movie?
He didn't have an affair with.
He almost did. Remember one of the neighbor moms?
But she was like into him.
But he didn't do it. But he was a good dad, and he didn't murder his wife.
He supported his wife.
Yeah, he did. So I'm saying, you can be a good stay-at-home dad. This guy wasn't. He couldn't handle it. And like the judge said, you know, that he felt superior to her. He wanted to lord his, you know, power over her. He wanted to put her in her place.
And they lived near his dad's.
He wanted to literally cut her down, and he did. I think that by reading through that confession, I think he took some satisfaction into just, you know, reducing her to literal parts.
He was proud of it, but let's.
He was.
How do we avoid this? So that's the.
I'm saying, women. Here's how you really got to not be scared of being alone. Women have to be not scared of being alone because women we're biologically wired to want to have a romantic partner, and sometimes women make bad choices and then they stick with them even though they're bad because they're afraid of being alone. Now, at some point, Tara Grant must have known that Stephen was a loser, but she was probably had kids with him already. Maybe she was thinking of divorcing him. Who knows? But you've got to weed these guys out early and don't have kids with them before, you know, just, you know, come on. Like you said, the funeral thing, the fact that he was like, oh, I couldn't find any work as a Democrat in 2006.
This is, okay.
I mean,
I know we don't slaughter shame here, but there's a little bit of a Yankee Candle party going on here too. The people that bind that kind of sentimentality, because I know there's some guys like this. I know the people that date them, and it's like it's a whole different world. But again, it's the Yankee,
she was a sucker for him coming to her grandma's
world.
funeral.
These are the people that go to like they wear charm bracelets and things like that.
I mean,
like, oh, he loves me so much. You're like, come on,
he won her over. I mean, and of course, this is his description of it, though. This is his side of it. Now, if Tara had been alive, if she were alive to tell her side of how they met, it might not have been that. She might have said, like, yeah, he came all the way to my grandma's funeral, which frankly I thought was a little bit creepy and stalkerish. But then, you know, 2 weeks later when I was back home, you know, we went out for drinks and he was just so funny and charming and everything. I started to fall for him. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? That was his version because in his mind, it was a grand romantic gesture gesture, and that's what cinched it. But I wonder if it actually was. I don't know. She seems like she was a smart, driven, organized,
Well, as they said in Wedding Crashers, where are you the most vulnerable? At a funeral. I mean, like, what a great place to pick up
exactly.
women. But it's true, though. I mean, like, if you're...
It does. It makes you want to, like, grasp life by the whatever, and,
No. What you should do is go after the guy that shows up at a random event, like, he goes to your nephew's baptism or graduation. Something fun.
You should, like, go after the guy who, like, shows up at your friend's party all sweaty with two lesbians because he's hoping to get into a threesome with them, and then, like, runs around and you think, like, this guy's on drugs, and then later you find out, nope, not on drugs. That night he was just really sweaty and hyper.
Only one of them was
really
lesbian.
excited.
And
you tried to pass them off as, like, lesbians that you were going to hook up with.
I did.
I
did not hook up with them at all.
No. I mean, everyone knew that was not going to.
I was asked.
You looked so excited. There was no way.
I was excited. Anywho, so I guess I should tell a story now. Palate cleansing story about
about a time you didn't get murdered.
Yeah, about a time I didn't get murdered. And I gotta admit, I have not put any thought into... Well, I've got a good story.
Okay,
murder.
good.
It's actually pretty funny. It involves Africa, but not so much me.
Okay.
I was living in Nairobi for a little while, and there's tons of British people that come through there. And, like, I guess there's an age there. It's usually, like, after high school, after college, or university there, where they travel for a year or two, a lot of people. And so, the British women were great. I want to point out that I did hook up with one of them, though, the entire time I was there.
You didn't? Or you did?
No, God, no.
Oh, no. You weren't their type.
No, they kept making fun of the way I talk.
I don't see the Brits going for you.
Say water. I'm like, water. And they're like, ho. You goddamn Brits.
They're too proper for you.
But there was the British equivalent of me, who I just loved. We were good friends. His name was Peter. And, like, we would, he was attached to the university. He was there for a month and a half. And, like, he'd be like, hey, Dave, want to get some fish and chips or whatever, my accent's so terrible, like, yeah, let's get some fish and chips. So we just go out and get drunk and go to these casinos and things like that. And one night, he's, like, talking to me and some of his buddies, and, we're into these apartments and things like that. He's like, you know what? I've never been mugged. I've never been assaulted. I've had a soft life. I'm like, all right. So he's going through these guidebooks, and this is like 2001. We're there. We have no internet, no cell phones, and we have all these world traveling books, guidebooks. Where people have been there, and like they basically tell you which places not to go. So he makes a list of all the places not to go on a map and says, "I'm gonna go to all these places tonight." And then he puts out, and he's like,
"Oh, Peter."
Peter. Then he takes those little traveling packs that you have that you're supposed to put inside. It's like a reverse fanny pack.
Oh yeah. You put them inside your clothes.
You put it outside his clothes,
and
he stuffed it full of towels, so it was bulged more. He's like,
was a lot of drinking involved?
Almost none.
Really?
No, he's like, I want to see what it's like to be assaulted.
Did you realize that sometimes when you get mugged, you're murdered?
Well, I did. We're all looking at him like, you're fucking nuts. And so he's like, well, off to the night I go. Who wants to go with me? Tally ho. Like, God damn it, Peter. No one wants to go with you. And so he's like, we're sitting in the apartment, like someone's like, we should go with him. I'm like, maybe we shouldn't. And then a British person says, hey, he's fucking nuts. Why can you go with you? Fucking, he's like, I mean, again, Africa was fucking dangerous. Like, I routinely would get shaken down by police with machine guns who would just recognize you as being not African because of your pasty white skin. And this guy was pastier than anyone I've ever seen in my life.
Because I'm picturing the guy who's remember in Bridesmaids, her two roommates at the beginning? That guy, that British guy. That's totally what I'm picturing.
He's one of those skinny fat guys. He wasn't skinny, he wasn't fat, but he had a build.
He was soft.
He was soft. He was soft and weak, and
oh boy.
I mean, but then we're talking about this. Not 2 minutes goes by, and we hear this pounding at the door. It was the man! It's Peter out in the door, and we open the door. He's like, that was a terrible idea. I opened the gate, and I saw two people. They looked at me. He walked 15 feet out, and then he just ran right back in and was banging on the apartment door, and which is probably, good. But he was so into the idea of getting mugged. That was his whole idea, his whole plan.
Gonna get mugged for towels, and they would have seeing that it was towels stuffed in his fanny
not
pack?
a single part of his plan.
And then they would have just shot him just for the inconvenience.
Raped him. I mean, he's the kind of person you'd probably rape.
Oh my
just,
God.
Just general principle. I mean, like just to say that you did. I mean, if I was like I mean, that's how that would happen. But it was just like it was. But yeah, anyways, he lost his entire resolve within 2 minutes of walking around.
Good.
No, I remember it was my last.
His sense of self-preservation kicked in just in time.
I remember my last night in Africa though was a very similar thing. Like just walking by yourself at night because there's no street lights. I mean, there's dead bodies lying on the street.
Oh my God!
Too. But I went to some nightclub and there's this guy there that. He was like some Indian DJ that led us up to some club, and like I went there under the pretense of they might have ecstasy. I've never tried ecstasy, so we go there and like they're passing out these pills and things like that, and like the guy said, "It's just it'll jack you up. It'll jack you up." I'm like, I don't want to get jacked up. This is stupid. And they're playing turbo music, and I'm like, I gotta get out. I'm really nervous about flying too, and so I have to get a flight the next day. I'm like, fuck it. I'm just gonna go back to the hotel and have a cigarette and a drink or the apartment. And so I leave. My friends are still there. It's only like maybe a mile walk. And I'm walking and there's not a single person outside. I'm like, this is fucking... And I realize, if anyone sees me, I'm just like this lone tourist in a strange country where there's really no laws.
Oh my God.
1 o'clock in the morning. And I don't think I've ever been more scared of my... Well, I get scared a lot. But yeah, I was really kind of scared because I'm just like, there's no... Anyone that saw me at that point, there's no fine line between order. If anybody wanted to do something, they could do something. I was defenseless, you know.
You didn't have a giant machine gun.
I had a knife, actually.
Oh, did you? Was it a machete?
No, just this little pocket knife that I would carry with me. And they didn't frisk us as
keep
the
your
clubs.
blade on you at all times.
It was just useful to have there, in all honesty. It was good to have something just for various cutting instruments.
That's terrifying.
It is. So, anyways, it's kind of a rambling story.
I like it.
Yeah, but
I like your Africa stories. They're crazy.
They're all. I'm a wild and crazy guy, baby.
You are.
So, I guess the moral of the whole Stephen Grant thing is don't slap a stay-at-home dad, just divorce them and avoid marrying them because they'll kill you.
Yeah, well, avoid marrying guys who are insecure and yet have inflated egos at the same time. There are a lot of those guys out there, by the way. Remember the guy who pretended he was in med school and then, surprise, he wasn't, and before they could find out, he murdered his wife who was pregnant? Remember that one?
I don't.
Oh, God. Well, I gave it away. We won't do an episode on that one.
All right.
Good night,
Parker
wrapping
people.
it up. Stephen Grant, piece of shit.
That's a wrap.
Good night.
Let's watch The Green Mile.
Oh.
Thank you once again for listening to How to Avoid Murder and Other Awkward Situations. If you're listening to this, that means you haven't been murdered, and we've done our job. Make sure you check us out on Facebook at How to Avoid Murder or online on the World Wide Web at avoidmurder.com. And until next time, stay safe.